criminal justice system, and the criminal justice system is modern plantation plea bargain undergirds a transformation of chattel slavery and black coats, a sentencing regime manifesting as mandatory minimums of person desperate complex Steiner, 16 Southern slavery to figure the possibility of all kind of slavery. You conform to quantity, humanizing normal, how innocent a slave might be at the bit, nothing to be accused was to be convicted was to be by John the Shore, justified murder, utilitarian action, preservation of rule, and order, irresponsible power of the plantation persisted as social and civil death, racial domination continued, persists through the CGS, the police system is entrapment to its meaning practice of racial domination, previous errors have been sediment, the prosecutor operated to make valid decide which the accused are punished, the role of prosecutorial function and extrapolable and profound plea bargaining is a criminal justice system. In the case, more than 95% have been held to a high evidence standard required to validate criminal conviction. The value of mandatory minimum sentence and value bargaining chip given away for a plea. The regime appears divorced from coupling form to intensity students and racially selected charging people of color are unlikely to feel free to distinguish equal exchange from domination. Best and most recent statistics prove that plea bargaining was discriminatory. Controls incarceration and criminalization. Brio 17. White defendants are 45% more likely to opt for charge reduction, may limit possibility to convict white defendants 74 and more likely to all misdemeanor charge to guarantee potential imprisonment. This creates lower average and road high rates of wrongful conviction. In these cases, black individuals begin to be labeled a criminal. White defendants see felony charges drop their amended misdemeanor charges 14% more often. Plea bargaining is procedural entrapment that sustains mass incarceration. The unreviewable power of the prosecutor strips bodies of rights and sediments racial domination. Heiner 2. For criminal defense, a color code in one situation compels to often criminate penalty may be distinct from antebellum functioning analysis. The logic of racial domination places in necessary condition mass incarceration without the forfeiture of rights. So pre-bargain regime manufactured CGS cannot press the vast number of people of color, just institutional entrapment, social death of newly prosecutorial function as a functional analog. The irresponsible power of administrative plantation law, both enforcing race by the terms of racial contract, the prosecutorial discretion unaccountable behind closed doors, and the intricate mechanics of misdemeanor process, racialized crime, mark black sold criminals, absent the presumption of innocence, prioritizing efficiency over truth creates a stereotype of black offender and causes mass incarceration, not a power. Quote, the misdemeanor process for a step in racialization, crime to conviction, generate young black men, petty conviction label, criminal and police use to discipline, misdemeanor replicating the concrete mechanism to system able to generate criminal based on race sentence from day, evidence requirements, politically disfavored black acts of legal at its heart, is a lurking suspicion, poor black men are probably guilty, processing, presumed guilty is chiefly supposed to make higher power investigating innocent police of the power to transfer black men to criminal regardless of evidence. Each of defendants, evidence and process do not matter. Many will trade to accept conviction to haggle misdemeanor gateways as a key entry point through a trace comes to distort the meaning of penal system. Plan text, Supreme Court of the United States in the next available test case how to rule the practice of plea bargaining unconstitutional on the basis it violates the Equal Protection Clause, amended at clause after protection. I'll specify a test case if you ask MCX. Cruise 93 summarizes. Courts could overturn prosecutorial discretion results in disracial impacts and discretion may disparately affect racial minority court concludes the impacts potentially burden the racial minority court could subject action to substantive equal protection also court might invalidate plea bargaining policies created a substantially disparate impact. The court might decide prosecutorial discretion regarding plea bargaining violates equal protection guarantees crash. System led its ruthless efficiency collapse under its own weight. That caused a wide-scale restructuring of the CGS. Alexander 12. What would happen if that's refused to plea? I couldn't bring the whole system, the whole base of fake friends are for the overwhelming majority of theoretical can crack system just by exercising rights. Yet mass incarceration dependent cooperation. If everyone suddenly exercised right to create chaos would force incarceration on top of general policymakers sharply scale back criminal cases filed for drug possession, for example, action create a racist system would crash and no longer function. Protest would force a public conversation we have intended to avoid our justice system, which works only long as we accept its term. Absent plea bargaining, the politics of carcerality become unsustainable. The F opens up the space for decriminalization, exposing the contradiction of the law. Heiner 3. Create a crisis by self-intention for society control racial injustice assertion, but overall the regime of mass incarceration Christ so forth the government to take remedy. Racial injustice prosecutor use discretion to assist 150,000 plead guilty or equivalent to permanent dismissal of law enforcement necessitates seismic from police and mass assertion would raise widespread up to legitimacy. Such potentialities would force reform and correction to criminalization. Widespread assertion would expose the moral legitimacy mass incarceration by continuing to attend to procedural entrapment and greasing the wheels of carceral machine. Framing the standard is minimizing structural violence. First, ethical theories that aren't grounded in current social context fail to analyze racial inequalities and real world issues. Mills 9. Ideal theory enables you to do what you. Ideal theory enables you to say what a society just but not tell you what to do if you find yourself in not just sign one correct and just an idea, but no practical words, but non-idealist for reality justice seeks so each means for correcting or trying to rectify systemic black disadvantage for affirmative action, not the equivalent, not discriminant. One takes that ideal completely non-ideal history, gives whites a systemic advantage. Second is oppression normatively bad. It excludes people from moral deliberation, makes them victims of violence. At their 8-point impacts matter in your framework or viewpoint, they can't condemn oppression. You should reject it. Third, this round should be centered on mass incarceration. Ethics in the age of the prison-industrial complex require a specific stance against its violence. Roberts 4. Imprisonment built on assertions of social benefits. It is or temporary martial divert detention through houses or political function policy defend with moral weight to social movements opposing policies that create more prisons, minds of racial repression, slavery, Jim Crow, pride, person moral question, prison become an invention, normal way of life, social consequence, making moral question, and escapable incarceration is morally private incarceration serves a repressive function of democratic norms, and health and moral research will underscore the urgency of which with question before a person obliterates most American sense of justice. No act of mission for distinction for states and simplicit approvals of actions entail more responsibilities unseen for real. Governments face a choice among possible policy distinction between acts and mission, not made morally relevant, different than authorized private act, not admitted to do anything distinction. He comes obscure and government formally forbids private action, but chooses to set policy and not discourage it. Fish improves personal identities, reduction is psychological continuity doesn't exist. Focus suppose both hemispheres of your brain are transplanted each into different head. Each recipient will actually skip this card. I'm not going to read it. Next is language cannot describe reality, which means a priori knowledge fails. Conner, seven rational thought is inseparable from language. Well, belief is never totally the same as another concept. Belief is formed by arbitrarily discarding individual differences. Our understanding of the world is based on falsification of experience. Only moral hedging resolves moral uncertainty. Bowie, 13 philosophers disagree in 2009 survey of philosophers 30.8 indicated uncertainty. What's the best way to act on moral uncertainty? My favorite theory of which is mistaken is more rational, maximize probability of being right. The value of outcomes under each theory should be factored into our decision-making process as well. If we could maximize some kind of expected value or expected value and outcome, probability of it being right multiplied by value of it being right if it is indeed right. Didn't read Oakley and Halligan and didn't go read Wilson.
Oakley and Halligan at the bottom?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So in time, let's start at the bottom. The Conard evidence says language cannot describe reality. Will you deploy this as a presumption trigger?
No, I won't trigger SCAP with it.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right. So let's start with the substance. So first of all, you say crash the system, let collapse under its own weight. Does your solvency rely on the criminal justice system collapsing?
No. I mean, that solves for some impacts, but it's not the only impacts.
Okay, so I want you to identify the solvency pathways. The first one is there's a crash. The second one is there's protest. The third one is discursive. Yeah.
Well, yes, all of those, but also plea bargain itself is racist, which is where Halo and Heiner evidence. Abolishing it is also good, even if it doesn't lead to broader reforms within the criminal justice system, because it leads to disparate outcomes that mark black people criminal.
Okay, so what happens to somebody who is guilty and would plea bargain if the AF happens? What do they do in that world? Do they go to trial even though they're guilty? Even though they're guilty?
They can also plea if they want. I don't determine what people do.
Okay. So those
are we don't prevent people from pleading if they want to.
That's fine. Let's go to the plan. Will you specify test case?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull up.
All right. While you're doing that, your Cruz evidence says that a court might invalidate plea agreements if they found they created a substantially disparate impact. So in this analysis, do courts use the standard of strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny?
Equal protection, strict scrutiny, it's race.
Okay. So,
but we also determine what it means to find a challenge on strict scrutiny, which is established by equal protection. Also, on the test case,
my question is, do you fiat that the court finds that it violates a particular part of this, equal protection analysis? Like the strict scrutiny test, three-prong test. Like, which prong do you feel that it violates?
It creates disparate impacts.
Okay, that's not one of the
policy. The point is, it creates disparate outcomes that are not justified under the criminal justice system. They have to show substantial interest in plea bargaining, which is not met because of the way it creates outcomes.
Okay.
Also, in terms of test case, I do have.
Okay, go ahead. What is it?
Hughes versus United States. It's on this current Supreme Court docket, and nice. They're deciding on plea bargains.
Cool. So, to recap, solvency pathways are you crash the system, which is good, and plea bargaining is independently racist, which is good. Why does the system crash?
The system crashes because there's no way people can prosecute. We don't have 30 times as many courthouses, bailiffs, judges, prisons, etc. It's impossible.
Okay, that's fine. On the plea bargaining is racist things, you say that it's more likely that, for example, African American defendants get worse plea bargains. What is the root cause of defendants taking coercive plea bargains?
Sure, that's contextualized by the Heiner situation. It puts defendants in no-win situation because they know it puts them in no-win situation because even if they're innocent, they're coerced into taking plea bargains.
How are they coerced? Are they overcharged?
Yes, they're overcharged.
Okay, are they overcharged with crimes they have or haven't committed?
I mean, it depends on individual cases.
Okay, that's fine.
But there's also a distinction. Different the same action can be criminal under like different statutes, like misdemeanor and felony, which is why you're able to plead down to lower ones. They're charged with the most severe ones, which is bad.
Okay, that's fine.
Are you taking prep?
Yeah. What did you say the case was?
Sorry?
What did you say the case was?
Versus United States.
Okay.
It's currently awaiting a decision from the court.
Exciting. I stop prep just a minute, saying the doc.
Order?
2 off case. The case is going to have a pretty big overview on the substance, so maybe you want to get a new sheet of paper.
Sure.
Actually, I changed my mind. Start prep. My bad. Stop prep. Use another 10 seconds. The order is now 3 off case.
Still, for the review, that I should have a new sheet of paper for.
If you would like.
Sorry, just a second. Alright.
Everyone ready?
Mm-hmm.
No worries. Cool. I negate first off, the interpretation the affirmative must defend the legislative action and clarify they may not defend the Supreme Court of law's plea bargains. Resolve means proposably enacted by law words and phrases. Resolve is to express and obtain a determination by resolutions of similar forces word and act of offense to establish by law, and act must have a competing card definition. Resolve meaning judicial instruments and take away the applicability of my source and back community competing authority to weigh against ambiguous and my definition flows nothing that doesn't go another way. So I have a greater comparative risk of offense standards. First, precision of the resolution about legislative action, not judicial, but that alpha overlooks the difference sexuality, independent voter, and always pragmatic states man is the most non-biased way to determine abuse and won't allow about pragmatic advantage to win DB. Controls internally to particular topics only based for proven practice as possible, interpret the overwhelming consensus that proves that saturation after prep every transition into the Harvard-Westlake tournament invite says we'll use the January February NSDA rules and the invite is enforceable disclosure rules prove that means judge doesn't have jurisdiction to vote for NAFTA violates rules when engaged in psych topics. The legislators make major changes to the criminal justice system. Courts just provide clarification in secondary and Logan 11. Since these mid-20th century criminal law limits special regarding behavior being codified by the American legislature with courts providing secondary and laws based on a rule the courts themselves probably represent a significant departure from the story to topic that is the key internally to education because A terms which education relevant to the debate and B is published in peer review, which means more applicable outside of the debate and applicability is the standard by which we measure the value of education. Skip to the next page. Third, field abuse, all identified two internal links. First object, the affidavits of the court taking interpretation of reverse previous decision uniquely abusive because legislators vote on their principles, but court rule based on static interpretation of constitutional and second actually the court can't just declare a rule in these cases with affidavits that somebody sues even if he already has a test case, he fails that they vote in a certain way, so it's the object field multiple impacts. Safeguard field abuse means African leverage, non-resolution source of offense against negative fatal way of potential arms is still the strongest
internal interference because infinite possible abuse often to be predictability increase in scope of chaos explodes the number of possible odds because you can attack on anything and whether the resolution kills cost engagement creates fun for a purpose and also independently justifies no RBI is forced to player in the one and single applicability is no single opportunity to ensure everything that after requires to take place. That means even if we decide it's a good idea at the end of the round we'll never be in a position to implement voter fairness because it's constitutive of any competitive activity drops the barrier because one key turns to the NC strategy is already students there's no argument you can drop on topicality and use competing interpretation because one reasonability double mind the other except an arbitrary value for reasonability which comes in place or we debate over which comes in place competing interpretation to reasonably creates race the mob or but the players race abuse so they can reasonably justify no RBIs because one RBI is a logical they turn defense to offense while legitimate reason to vote two RBIs encourage to be through pop which means all the sanctions to sets RBI 3 RBIs encourage three RBIs shield good theory which always because it's easy to beat back for this theory but hard to beat back substantive arguments also education voted because it's terminal impact from debate. Next up. Cards bracket for general language. Ethics is first philosophy cannot be derived from external qualities, but is simply self-evident, reveals itself in our encounters with other beings of multiple reasons. First, using any academic framework presupposes certain values that true the good scholarship, however, that presupposes realm of ethical bypass and commitment to certain methodological reality cannot be derived from external disciplines because values to value in some facets of the discipline in the first place. Second, we cannot derive enough from this fact that state of affairs would be desirable and not general obligation to pursue it. Additionally, states of affairs become desirable only in terms of one orientation towards my payments only bad because of the sentiments agrees that ethics cannot lie in a non-ethical foundation. Thus, ethics must be in instances of interaction with other part of philosophical categorization. However, I'm fundamentally different from other creating an unreasonable epistemic God. Boom. I experience a world that so overflows from my experience I cannot have created a point of view I can never occupy because the only way to define it is that it is not mine because other radically escapes my cognition for totalization and position my will for a job. Justification in principle unavailable my responsibility once illuminated part of who I am. Implication AL theories that attempt to bridge the gap by universalizing some constitutional feature of an age of fail they cannot make claims for dynamic other be with absolute ethical obligation to others logical priority of ethics we must encounter the other face-to-face any mediation or relation inevitably requires us to totalize the other fit our perceptions to standards rejecting totalization when we totalize the other by claiming to understand we engage perception of not that others sovereigns cannot give rise to ethical obligation because that's not first we understand their content immediate fashion beavers. If ideas are only interpretations of something ethics refer to other person who exists apart from my interpretation, no way in which ideas can refer to independently existing other person anytime I take the person my idea to be the real person close up contact with the real person central and so denies other their own autonomy, totalization denial of otherness the other the S presupposed other totalization will be unethical and the framework is not consequential you can't argue totalization mindset that close off any possible ethical interaction since we deny the nature of persons it's contradictory totalized for the end of minimizing pressure you can't argue it's each person is accessible since they hold a metaphysical view you cannot access means you can't another person on the plane to begin with when your calculation segregation concept basis all totalization idea we can amalgamate people in one race one at any one way of living we can't quantify positive obligations assembly rise only definitive constraints to avoid totalization because it prevents the origination of ethics contention. The AF is totalizing 3 reasons. First, abolishing plea bargaining requires that every instance crime shall have to challenge sexually adjudicate based on what totalizes the other's legal substance as a feature of the other's situation and contextualize our appropriate response like the adversarial nature of the child substance assumes every prosecutor every victim or survivor wants retribution no option for collaborative leniency except for plea bargains assumes their golden motivation. 3, total abolition totalizing does allow flexibility in our interaction with the other turns towards face necessity mercy of plea bargains should be permanent otherwise we don't allow that as in the other's dictated response to skip the third off go to framing on the 1AC. First, on the Males evidence, first time Males requirement of particularity because ethics arrives in a specific instance. Second, you assert universal rules, which Males would disagree with. He says the question is about how this is a tautology, this like saying good things are good. However, I take issue with 2 things. First, how he aggregates oppression. Second, how he defines oppression as target material of onside state oppression totalization. So we explain how you should address it on the Roberts evidence, which is just impact justified. It does provide a unique reason for first framing that an active mission distinction first and action low and option. Second, this doesn't take out because totalization has to come first, precludes the opportunity of acting ethically in the future. Then he says operating on all just fails, that's not relevant. Then he says moral hedging. However, first of all, there's no way to weigh between different impacts because some are ideological and some are consequential. Second, totalization comes first because it prevents any ethics from rising in the future. And third, moral hedging fails because it creates cascading uncertainty because there's an uncertainty in a projection of uncertainty, which means which leads to infinite regress. AC overview. First, turn abolition drives plea bargains underground, which makes them less accountable and pierces if it's good not. Turns of like plea guilty even without plea bargaining courts give lower sentences to defendants who plead guilty way around the bed and judge take matters into their own hands by making deals with defense courts not stop unofficial deals. Second, turn abolition plea bargains just leads to more guilty pleas per 76. Abandoned plea bargaining result in defense pleading guilty to the charges of the majority of defense said narcotic sales now plea guilty without going to trial. Third, the AF increased innocent conviction also 6. Without plea bargaining the legal system but after reduced going to trial would make very less reliable innocent defense face squares erroneous conviction Christian welcome negotiated pleas which mitigate severity down the he identifies 2 solvency pathways. The first one is protest movement, the second one is crash and legal reform. First on crash, turn credit reports lead to core package which increased size of the judiciary. The AF laws Trump to appoint judges and choosing till it all to get. Case law judge suspension of appellate courts was dramatic in the case law in the 70s. Congress became more concerned about official precedent rather than ideological gains, adding more judgeships laws president to gains of policy control of federal courts and Trump appointments caused accurate structural violence which also rolled by that by facilitating over-policing and discrimination against criminal trial in 17. Locals play a critical role in deciding voter rights, contraception, prisoner rights, discrimination, decision, fail state. Trump's judicial nominees double the number by any other president nominees or skip the judicial efforts to correct unconstitutional policing prison conditions willing to dramatically shape American social and cultural life over the next 30 or 40 years. Skip the next crowd and go to the protest. Evidence solvency only comes to math movements coincide all your inherent evidence proves people don't care so known for the link your author highness AT. People have to coordinate time against the public side math political pressure to adjust the causes. Tries to do carceral reforms other than carceral fortification, mass search and racism. Be organized among those who fear face less risk of penalization. Then on the overview, he's going to make an argument that plea bargaining is intrinsically racist. However, they rely on the higher evidence about criminalization. However, criminalization is less bad if you get a misdemeanor instead of a felony, which means the AF at least, but the negative resolves it would be worse in the world of the AF. Cross legs.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Your resolve definition, it says it's similar to a word which means to establish by law. Where you show resolve means it has to be established by legislature.
The evidence doesn't indicate that. But
so the evidence does not indicate it has to be a policy, right?
What?
The evidence says it's similar to an act, which means to establish by law, but it says resolve just means to express an opinion. How's the act not expressing an opinion that the court should do something?
So you left off a prepositional clause there. It's to express an opinion or determination by resolution. And then words and phrases contextualizes it and says it's most similar to legislation.
It's similar to what?
Okay.
So
you would have to prove that it's more similar to
how do topics
judicial.
like jury nullification and like inaction in the face of justice function where every act must be a policy?
I didn't take a stance on those.
No, I'm asking. It seems like you make arguments about framers and intent and like what they mean by resolved. Why was resolved included in those resolutions when it would have made the topic non-functional?
It doesn't necessarily make the topic non-functional. For example, there were plenty of, like, for example,
how do you feel a policy that makes individuals act in the face of injustice? Then I guess
I don't know about that one, but
topic,
specifically in the context of the courts one, right? Qualified
on
immunity
the
is
topic
something that individual
on the
legislators
topic
can
lit
have.
standard.
Yeah.
You say courts have never made like big criminal justice reform. What were things like Gideon, Miranda versus Arizona, etc.?
So Gideon and Miranda are different because
your card just makes a claim they don't make changes to the criminal justice system. I'm asking why are those not part of the criminal justice system?
So they would be, but specifically
were those major changes?
I mean, you can make that argument if you want. The argument that Logan makes, and you can contextualize it specifically.
Yeah, Logan's in the context of police laws, right?
Yeah, so police have prosecutorial powers.
Fiat abuse, what previous decisions do we reverse?
Any decisions that
what previous ones? I want you to name specific decisions that the
Okay, for example, Cooper versus Fry would be overruled because in Cooper versus Fry, the legislator ruled about a specific aspect of plea bargaining, but did not overturn plea bargaining as a whole. Your case, Hughes versus United States, only applies to it's only being appealed because of a specific aspect of plea bargaining. It's not being appealed to overturn plea bargaining as a whole.
Sure.
On the
framework.
Decision.
You make a lot of arguments about universalizability and how like agency isn't true.
No.
Why does that apply to the AF?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're like universalizing a constitutive form of the agent, etc. How does that apply to you? I'm reading verbatim from your card. You say all theories that attempt to bridge a gap by universalizing.
Oh, on the NC. Sorry, I thought you were mainly responding to the one I see. Say again.
It seems to apply to like Kantianism frameworks or frameworks that make universal rules. Why does that apply to the app?
Because you make a universal rule about resisting oppression.
Well, do you go for like the ought is argument and skip?
No.
Okay. Why do you have a duty to the other?
It simply arises.
Why?
The argument that Levinas makes is that you cannot derive the duty to the other through epistemology or like metaphysics, ontology.
Why does it hurt the other? Sorry again.
So I'm not saying it hurts the other, I'm saying it totalizes the other. Totalization is the mediation of our perception of the other through a certain frame. Think of it as like seeing somebody through a glass.
What was your response to moral hedging?
3. First, you can't weigh between consequential and deontological theories. Second, totalization is the worst possible harm under moral hedging. Third, cascading uncertainty.
What was the answer to act admission?
There were 3. Oh no, there was only 2. I didn't read the third one.
Are they in the doc?
No. I extend
then
all
what
the
were
responses to your framing.
So yeah, then what were they?
Okay, so first, inaction is always an option for the government as the default state. And second, this doesn't take out the NC because totalization still has to come first because it prevents us from ethical acts or ethical omissions. The second argument? Second argument is this doesn't...
so you won't delink if we're like, the government allows totalization by plea bargain? Will you not make an argument that it's an...
No, I'll make an argument that's not relevant because the NC isn't consequentialist, but the act admission distinction does not like imply consequentialism per se. It just says you should be responsible for your intended omissions as well as your intended acts.
Okay. What was the argument about not being able to evaluate substance on theory?
What?
The argument on theory about, like, you made an argument about substance. No, never mind.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And sorry, what was the answer to Mills?
To Mills, there were 2. First, I meet Mills' particularism warrants, and second, you violate because you assert a universal rule.
Okay. 55 seconds left. T, case, NC.
Cool.
There's a doc.
Right.
Could I have your Shan?
Oh, yeah, it's here.
Let me know when you've all got it.
All right.
Everyone good?
Give me a sec.
The dog really called Patrick stuff.
Oh shoot, I sent the wrong one.
Okay, I was gonna say, wine rib was not an NC.
Yeah. It's at the bottom of the doc. That was just like my doc of stuff to copy.
Sorry, Jackson, I like substantive debate.
Wait, it's at the
Bottom.
Oh, did you send a new one?
Yeah, just now.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if there's a enter after court in the doc. I think I deleted it and they're on the same line. Just where it says court resolved is one word. There's just a line break there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Alright. Everyone good?
T case NC.
Everyone read it?
Yeah.
Counterinterpretation, the firm to expect the Supreme Court, if they have a test case resolved, means if you express an opinion, dictionary.com to seek no form of expression opinion, stress, you not expect an actor, let's happy shifting the link from that government process, education, being about courts, teaching knowledge, judiciary, and the ways decision affect policy, which is important, especially on topic of courts, ground one actor limits us to fake act, which proves an act because they lose process, counterplans, they just has like court legitimacy, the topic, let's enter court shape, judicial reform, cross-examination of embarrassing things like Miranda versus Arizona and Gideon Wainwright show that it's not just police reforms that are relevant. Shepard, when people outside courts can summon up the same mental illicit title, overlook the growing role in remaking American court system, or have been played leading role in teaching other courts, nation, law school, legal education because of formal doctrine. The resolved definition, it doesn't say it has to be enacted by Congress. It says it's similar to another word that does obviously wrong. Past offer like jury nullification and action in the face of injustice would be impossible to debate, which means he should be skeptical. That's what the framework's intent was. Semantics isn't better. If you could have predicted and prepared the app, it doesn't matter if we're slightly off, especially turning out rules, which are enforced by Taproom. If we have a counter definition default to pragmatics, otherwise there's no objective way to compare them. Use reasonability. Good enough is good enough. It's not arbitrary because you should already have a high threshold for marginally bad practice. The fiat abuse argument doesn't make sense. We don't fiat a test case because we say that it is. Your argument for mitigating it doesn't make any sense. We also don't overturn prior court precedent. You can't make a specific case where the court specifically ruled that there's a constitutional right to it, just where there's a constitutional right in it, and then we've introduced new evidence. There's also no reason you can't overturn it. Congress overturns laws all the time. It's no different. It's not fiat abuse. People run it all the time. The case debate. Plea bargain is inherently racist. Statistical evidence from Borrego shows that white people get bad deals. It leads to them being criminalized and marked as a deviant other, which answers Lebanon's argument because it marks the other, because it marks black people as criminals, which is inherently bad. We do crash the system. I'll get into the specific I'll get on the specific arguments line by line, but they have had no evidence that the courts could handle a 30 times increase in the number of pleas. If they win their arguments that give people still guilty pleas and cause a circumvention to answer all of their NC arguments, because it shows that people will still plead the line by line. It doesn't drive it underground. All the examples come from smaller times. It's a SCOTUS decision and not something prosecutors would violate because they're acting in an unconstitutional manner that subjects them to penalties. It's also a small time. Our offense comes from a broad, wide-ranging system. People might care if El Paso causes it, but it does cause reform on a broader level. It doesn't lead more people to plead guilty. This is there are other programs that were implemented to get people to plead guilty other than plea bargains, but you don't read any evidence that would be implemented in the status quo, which means there's no uniqueness on it. It doesn't convict innocents, and even if it convicts a higher proportion, it's a lower number because there are less trials that go through the courts in the first place. It doesn't lead to court packing. There's no uniqueness. Trump has set a record level for people appointed in the first era of the court, which means you should be skeptical that there's any reason that there are any variables. You haven't implemented a structural resolution. If Trump wants to do something, he will do it, which doesn't matter. Your only other argument is racism thing doesn't matter. It's less bad if they plead guilty. Obviously not. Yes, they might get longer sentences if they go to trial, but the argument is there are less people who go to trial because there's no reason to be able to solve the framework evidence here. First is the framework versus Mills. You've conceded that oppression is necessary. Ideal theory, which can only view people as others, but no way to resolve that otherness in the first place is necessarily bad. You don't resolve particularity. You are still an ideal conception of ethics, which means that you're not able to solve for the act omission distinction. If we win it, all of the app offense is relevant because you don't have a way to say admission. Your only other argument is that action can be an option. Yes, the government can choose not to act, but that's not a reason for why it's relevant to ethics. Your only other argument is your framework isn't consequential, so therefore it doesn't link. But yes, the argument is it leads to consequences, and you basically conceded, which means to solve your argument. You conceded a priori knowledge fails, which means we can't know who the other is or to say there's constitutive feature of ethics, which answers your argument. And what's conceded of the NC, use moral hedging. Your only argument is you can't link it. Yes, you can. You can weigh the percentage of offense against it. The entire point of it is yes, they're compatible ethics, but it's a way to resolve them. 11 also, an infinite duty. The other means it gets co-opted and generates false belief. Balkan duty, and the speaker not know what point is each truth and the views of the other recognize everyone by claiming incoherence solely on the failure to understand we place our responsibility and actual challenge on ourselves. Cut the card on ourselves. Their arguments don't make sense. You say we totalize people by forcing them to go to trial, but your own evidence indicates that they can plead guilty. We don't enforce a contract of content of retribution. We don't say whether it should rehabilitative. Judges are still able to be lenient, which means there's no argument. It's not constitutive of the action of the app. The final argument is not flexible, but obviously it is. Courts can still choose what they do. Fraud abolitions are not necessarily totalizing. All they do is totalize the law, which isn't the other.
All right, I had 2 minutes and 50 seconds of prep left. What was your response to the first contention?
What do you mean, first contention?
The first contention on the Lebanon.
Lebanon? We don't demand people be adjudicated by the law, so they can still choose to take guilty pleas. They don't have a right to plea bargains.
Okay. You didn't read the second Balkan card, correct?
No.
Did you extend the a priori knowledge fails argument?
Yeah.
What was the implication?
The implication is like that, yeah, we can have some constitutive basis that we just know that we have an obligation to the other, or we even know who the other is.
What was your response to cascading uncertainty?
What?
Do you respond to cascading uncertainty on hedging?
On moral hedging?
Yeah.
The
Okay,
point,
that's
it
fine.
was answered by the extension. Like, we didn't specifically label
Okay,
it.
that's fine. The order is going to be T, AC overview, T, AC overview, AC proper, NC.
Okay.
Sorry, can you repeat the order?
By overview, you mean like the case turns?
Yeah.
Okay.
T, case turns, framing, NC.
And there is no doc, right?
No cards. Is everyone ready?
I'm not going for T. Didn't read non-relevant, so eliminating is not relevant to the debate. Now on the case overview, he makes a major mistake. He makes contradictory arguments here. First, he says more people are going to trial, which crashes the court. Then he says actually fewer people are going to trial. He said less people are going to trial multiple times in response to the overview. If there are contradictory arguments in one area, you should allow the two and to pick between them because otherwise the two area gets to pick and I don't have the three and to respond that leads to infinite trust, infinite abuse because I can never predict what arguments the two area is going to go for. So don't let him say simultaneously that both more people go to trial and fewer people go to trial. Concede the argument that less people go to trial. That means there's literally no solvency coming out of the there's literally no solvency coming out of the 1AC because he's not crashing the courts or the legal system if fewer people are going to trial. In cross-examination, he identified the internal link to the Heiner evidence being that the federal and state judiciary cannot handle more people going to trial, but he says the less people go to trial, so he doesn't get any solvency coming off the 1AC. That there are a couple of implications of this. First, even if you grant him his hedging arguments, he has almost no solvency or no offense coming off the 1AC. That means a risk of offense on the 11S NC is going to be sufficient for you to negate that. The second implication of this is that if equal number of people are going to trial, the only difference between the world of the status quo and the world of the affirmative is that the people who are going to trial in the world is that the people who are not fewer people go to trial, more people are pleading guilty. People who are pleading guilty get harsher sentences. That is the That is the Ross evidence. Extend the Ross evidence to legal system. Extend the Ross evidence to innocent defense phase. Greater risk of erroneous conviction. He said applies to less people. However, the criminalization is worse. Extend his own Heiner evidence, which indicates that getting a felony is the worst form of harm. Worst form of harm is worse than the misdemeanor. That means those people are even additionally criminalized, which means a little bit of offense coming off the case terms. But I'm going to win on the NC. So go to the framing. His extensions of his framing evidence are very blippy, and he hasn't responded to all of my response he didn't respond to every single one of my responses to them. So we're gonna go through them first. He extends the Mills argument. He says that I have an ideal conception of what the other is. However, first of all, I don't say I have an ideal conception of what ethics is. I say ethics arrived in the particular instance of Mills is only critiquing idealized conception of ethics. Second, I just say that there is a subject and other is this is undisputable because any ethical theory has to acknowledge the fact that at least two people exist, so there can be ethical interaction between them. Second, extend the argument that he actually violates Mills because he asserts a universal rule. This argument was dropped, so even if I violate Mills, he violates a word, so Mills is actually a warrant for the NC framework. Then the other argument, he sends the act commission distinction. He says it leads to consequentialism. However, it doesn't lead to consequentialism just because act commission distinction without consequentialism would simply say that we're responsible for our intended acts and our intended emissions and the things that are intrinsic to each of those actions. It doesn't apply consequentialism. He's never warranted why it applies to consequentialism. Also extend the second argument I make on this that it doesn't take out the NC because totalization has to come first. It prevents our possibility for ethical acts or ethical emissions, so the NC still outweighs on magnitude. And then he sent the a priori knowledge argument to say we can't use a priori knowledge to know who the other is. However, the argument Levin's making is that you learn who the other is in specific instances. You encounter the other. You don't need an idealized conception of them. That's the entire point of the NC. And then finally on the hedging argument, he concedes cascading uncertainty. He sent the cascading uncertainty argument. At least with epistemic confidence, you cut off your uncertainty after the first estimation of who's winning the framework debate, whereas you have cascading uncertainty because there's uncertainty in each of your predictions. For example, you might be 40% confident, 60% prediction that the 1AC is winning, but that multiplies out to even more uncertainty. So when we minimize uncertainties by eliminating hedging, this was conceded in the last speech, so don't let him go for hedging in the next speech. 2NR. Overview. Only the NC can provide an explanation for any aspects of the AC framework, even if oppression is bad as an abstract concept that fails to guide action. A. Extend the Bloom evidence. We can understand that others' conception of pain or oppression, so any theory that fails to take the other into account substituting because it results in an imposition of one's view of oppression on them. And B. The framework cannot explain motivation, even if I think my own oppression is bad. That doesn't give me a normative reason to minimize anyone else's oppression. Only that NC meta-ethic of ethics, the first philosophy, can explain the reason we want to alleviate others' oppression because of the pull we feel to the face of the other. That means totalization is a side constraint because it precludes our desire to help others, empirically proven by how the right wing totalizes black people and they don't feel any obligation to reduce their oppression. Totalization must be a first question. This also explains why none of their consequentialist terms make sense because our interpretation of Levinas does not generate a positive obligation for the government because the whole argument in Levinas makes the positive obligation to arise in a particular situation. The offense from the NC doesn't arise from a particular obligation or a particular other. Instead, it arises from a general obligation to prevent totalization. It's the only universal obligation because it prevents ethics from arising in the first place since our encounter with the other is mediated. That takes out all their line by line on the framework as well. They assume the government needs to be responsive to a particular other and weigh between particular obligations and others, but that is not what the NC is saying. He only makes one response to the NC framework. That's the Balkan evidence. He says an answer to the other leads false beliefs. However, first of all, it's not relevant just because you have an ethical obligation to the other doesn't mean you have an obligation to assume their beliefs. Balkan is misinterpreting. And second, it's specifically not relevant to the political philosophy of Levinas because just because individuals have an absolute obligation to the other, the only responsibility of the government is to make sure we're not totalizing individuals, so individuals can still act on that. So extend the framework properly. Extend the argument that ethics must come first. That say takes out any of his meta-ethical justification. Also takes out moral hedging. We need to prioritize that ethics is first follows to extend the Bloom evidence. Ethics arises from the other. That means we cannot totalize because totalization literally precludes the opportunity for any ethical action because we are engaging with the immediate conception of the other, which means there's no possible way ethics can arise in that situation. So any risk of offense to NC outweighs the AC because of prior questions. So let's go to the contention level. I'll go for the first argument, second argument, that we view the other's legal subject. He says the individuals can still plead guilty, but we still fit them into either guilty pleas or innocent pleas. We don't allow any sort of leniency. Also extend the collaborative leniency argument. He says judges can be lenient. However, this still assumes an adversarial role between the prosecutor and the defendant, which he hasn't responded to this argument at all. That totalizes both the prosecutor and the defendant, which I'll also extend the third argument. He says courts can still choose to be lenient, but we need to maximize the opportunity for leniency. We need to maximize the opportunity for people to be flexible within justice system. So there's conceded offense on Levinas. I'm very clearly winning the framing debate. That's where you have to vote in this debate.
1 minute. Or 55 seconds. Yeah, I'm good. Alright, case framing NC. Everyone ready? Here's the problem. They basically conceded case solvency. There is no contradiction. The argument is courts cannot handle a 30 times increase in people choosing to go to trial, which necessitates that they fundamentally prosecute less people. Yes, in the first instance, a lot of people go to trial, but necessarily the courts resolve that, and Congress resolves it by decreasing the amount of penalties and number of people who are prosecuted, which is not a contradiction. Their arguments is, we didn't make two arguments that yes, people plead guilty. That leads to less trials and less people pleading guilty in the long run. But it's necessarily one is an effect of the other and one causes the other. It isn't a contradictory argument. It's a basic Alexander and Heiner evidence, which has been conceded. The next argument is a conviction of innocence argument. They've conceded that if we win that, we reduce trials, which we have, because you haven't contested any of our solvency. That may be a higher percentage. Maybe instead of 10% of innocent being convicted, it's 12%, but it's a far lower number of trials. There's a 5% as many trials as normally, because courts cannot handle a 30 times or even 15 times number of increase in trials, which means less criminalization happens. They've conceded that the criminal justice system marks people deviant and marks them as other and totalizes them, because it views them as guilty or innocent. None of their case answers are able to answer it. If we win our act omission distinction argument, it means even if we don't win our framework, their framework is consequentialized, and if we win that the world of the affirmative leads to less totalization than their alternative, then that's necessarily a reason to negate. We're able to solve for the incarceration of hundreds of thousands of black and brown males every year, which is also a reason you should prefer us on moral hedging if we win our risk or our framework is true, because we have a massive impact where there only be like, oh, you categorize people into guilty or not guilty, which isn't an argument. The act omission distinction argument, you've basically misunderstood the argument. You presume your framework is correct, while our argument is it consequentializes your framework. There is no distinction between action and omission. Even if the government is able to admit it necessarily authorizes that action, it authorizes the totalization that occurred. Your argument is that your framework is mean-based, but obviously our framework consequentializes it. Yes, totalization is still important, but if the world of the affirmative has less totalization than a negative, that has a reason to prefer it. The a priori knowledge argument is mishandled. It's not a question of how we know who the other is, but rather how we know what's constitutive of ethics. Your argument is it arises from knowledge itself, which is impossible because we can't use language to describe reality. The particularity argument, you've conceded that you're not able to solve for action. You're not a particularity argument. It's rather a question of what we determine. Mitigating structural violence is not some idealized rule that is unable to account for the specificity of oppression, but the rule of the affirmative is, which is necessary to ethics because it's able to actually achieve the ideal for a world that their framework allows for. The moral hedging argument, no cascading uncertainty. Our argument is that you are able to resolve it after some point, and there's no cascade. The case evidence, you should be able to explain case evidence if the NC case, if you go for it. Their argument is that we don't resolve the adversarial nature of the trial system and the fact that people are categorized into guilty or not guilty, which neither the AV nor negative is able to resolve. People are still able to take pleas. There's no reason for a plea burden necessarily constitutive of the NC framework, and they only spend 20 seconds on it. We don't totalize anyone. Prosecutors can still be lenient and impose their own retribution, but our only question is whether plea burden is bad, and all the case offense proves that.
Right.